The copper plate was face down beneath 300 pressed napkins when I found my name missing from my own restaurant. I lifted it from the linen cart with both hands. The metal still held the warmth of the service corridor. Founder, Executive Chef, Adrian Cole. 4 screws sat beside it in a ramekin, as neatly arranged as ingredients for a recipe nobody intended to serve. Above the kitchen pass, under the new brass lights I had chosen 2 years earlier, another plate read Marcus Vale. 12 minutes remained before Ember Row opened to the public. "Put that back," Lauren said behind me. My wife wore the ivory suit she saved for bank meetings and funerals. We had been separated for 8 months, but she still knew exactly how to stand in a doorway, so leaving felt like my idea. I turned the plate over. "In the cart or on the wall?" "Adrian, specificity matters in kitchens." Her eyes moved past me to the cooks pretending not to listen. 43 people had spent the day polishing glassware, checking reservations, and portioning food for a launch booked solid 3 weeks in advance. On the other side of the front doors, photographers were already testing their flashes. Lauren lowered her voice. "You signed the separation agreement. I signed away management authority while we divided the company. I did not sign away my name. Ember Row owns the wall. Then the wall has terrible taste." She almost reacted. For half a second, I saw the woman who used to laugh when I named every sourdough starter after an ex-president. Then the polished expression returned. "Marcus is the executive chef for the launch," she said. "The financing requires a recognizable name. And the food? The menu belongs to Ember Row." I looked through the pass. My braised short rib was reducing in the copper rondeau. Mina's black sesame choux cooled on the pastry rack. The sea bass cure I had adjusted over 14 tastings sat labeled in my sous chef's handwriting. Marcus Vale stood at the center island, giving an interview beside food he had not cooked. He noticed me and raised one finger to the camera crew, asking for a moment as if I had interrupted his kitchen. "Cole," he said, approaching, "I was told you understood the transition. I understand transitions. Usually someone finishes one thing before pretending they began the next." His smile was professionally forgiving. "Guests are not buying archaeology tonight. They want confidence. Then don't let them see the walk-in thermometer." The smile slipped. Good. It meant he had not checked it. Lauren stepped between us. "This is not happening in front of staff." "It already happened in front of staff. You removed the plate during prep." Mina Park came out of pastry, carrying a tray of glazed choux. At 42, she could silence a kitchen without raising her voice. She took in the plate, Marcus and Lauren. "I told facilities I wouldn't sign the removal sheet," she said. Lauren's jaw tightened, and they proceeded under ownership authority. Ownership apparently knows how to use a screwdriver. That will comfort everyone. The host stand bell chimed. Vivian Thorne entered through the service corridor with the hotel's opening night file under one arm. She was not dressed for photographs. Navy trousers, black silk blouse, hair pinned away from a face that never needed help, looking severe. The CEO of Thorne House Hospitality had invested in Ember Row because she said hotels needed restaurants with memories, not merely menus. Her gaze went to the loose screws, then to the empty rectangle above the pass, then to my hands. "Was he notified before his credit was removed?" she asked. Nobody answered. Vivian looked at Lauren. That was not rhetorical. "The separation agreement authorizes management changes," Lauren said. "The board approved the rebrand. Was he notified?" "No." Vivian set down her file. She walked to the host stand, took the master key from beneath the reservation tablet, and crossed the dining room, while every camera beyond the glass followed her. Lauren went pale. "Vivian, don't." The key turned. The front doors locked with a sound far smaller than the consequences. Outside, 200 invited guests stopped moving. Vivian faced the room. No one opens a restaurant by erasing the person who built the kitchen. Marcus stared at her. You just canceled a national launch over a nameplate. No, I said. The nameplate was cheaper. Phones rose beyond the glass. Inside, the staff began asking questions all at once. Servers wanted to know whether they would be paid. The bar manager had 12 cases of open wine. A line cook named Tomas had sent his babysitter an extra $100 to stay late. Mina put down her tray. Before anyone gives another heroic speech, 43 people are losing wages. Vivian's attention shifted immediately. Payroll for tonight will be honored by Thorne House. Can you guarantee tomorrow? Mina asked. Vivian did not lie. Not yet. Lauren opened her leather folder and removed a signed document. Then perhaps everyone should understand why this was legal. She placed the separation agreement beside the copper plate and turned to page 17. My signature appeared beneath a clause I remembered reading at 2 in the morning in our attorney's conference room. Lauren tapped the paragraph. All brand assets, trade identity, menu concepts, and derivative commercial materials associated with Ember Row transfer to the operating company pending final dissolution. The room seemed to narrow around the sentence. I read it twice. The first time as a husband who had trusted the woman across from him. The second as a chef who knew exactly how much carelessness cost. Menu concepts, Marcus said. That includes the launch menu. It includes the brand, I replied. Recipes are authored work. Lauren produced another page. The operating company's inventory lists 114 recipes as commercial assets. Mina leaned over my shoulder. Her expression changed at item 32. Black sesame shoe. That is mine, she said. Farther down were Tomas's smoked onion broth, our former sous chef's fermented chili base, and 6 dishes developed during staff tastings. Lauren had not merely removed me. She had turned the whole kitchen into collateral. Vivian looked at me. Did you approve this inventory? I have never seen it. Lauren's voice stayed controlled. You stopped attending board meetings. You returned emails through council. You asked me to keep the restaurant alive, and I did. That part was true, which made everything else harder. During our worst year, I had worked until dawn and called silence dignity. Lauren had negotiated rent extensions, vendor terms, and payroll loans, while I protected every plate from compromise. When our marriage cracked, I walked out of the office and told myself I was staying out of her way. The transfer clause may cover the name, I said. It does not prove who created the food. Marcus checked his watch. The press is broadcasting a locked door. We can litigate authorship after service. You want my team to cook under your name while we decide whether you own their work? I want them employed. Mina folded her arms. Careful. That sounded almost reasonable. Vivian picked up the copper plate. The restaurant remains closed until the asset inventory is verified. Her phone began vibrating. The screen showed the chairman of Thorne House. Lauren's showed the lender. Marcus's publicist was already typing with both thumbs. My own phone lit with a message from Tomas. My babysitter leaves at 11. Are we cooking or not? I looked through the glass at guests filming us, then back at the people in white jackets, waiting for someone important, to decide whether their work belonged to them. The plate in Vivian's hand carried one name. The food behind us carried dozens. We inventory every dish, I said. Tonight. Every notebook, tasting log, and contribution. Nobody claims a recipe until the people who built it are in the room. Lauren gave a short, exhausted laugh. You have 12 minutes of moral clarity after 8 months of absence. Then I'm 8 months late. I put my hand on the kitchen door. But I'm here now. The board gave Vivian 48 hours to reopen Ember Row before they replaced her as operating partner. She took the call in the empty dining room, while the rest of us carried recipe boxes into the private salon. I could not hear the chairman's words through the glass, but I watched Vivian remove one earring, set it beside her phone, and begin taking notes. She did that only when someone mistook volume for leverage. At the long walnut table, Mina divided the staff into teams. Notebooks went left. Digital files went right. Anything created during a paid test shift went into the center until we could establish who had contributed what. Marcus stood at the door. "This is absurd. You're asking cooks to reconstruct 2 years of development overnight." "No," Mina said. "We're asking them to remember who was standing next to them." Lauren had already called counsel. The operating company paid for ingredients, labor, and kitchen access. Collaborative input does not automatically defeat company ownership. "That sounded expensive," I said. "It was free. I have him on retainer." "Nothing is more expensive than a lawyer you think is free." She rubbed her temple, fighting the old impulse to smile. We had once been good at this. Her precision against my refusal to be impressed. Somewhere between the second payroll crisis and our 4th canceled anniversary, our argument stopped being a language and became a weapon. Vivian returned. "The hotel board will fund tonight's payroll. Tomorrow depends on a verified operating plan by 6 p.m. the day after tomorrow." Mina looked up. "And if there isn't one?" "They terminate the restaurant lease, trigger the lender's step-in rights, and replace Thornhouse as manager." Marcus nodded toward Lauren. "Which is why we open now." "Under disputed authorship?" Vivian asked. "Under the agreement Adrian signed." I slid the recipe inventory toward him. "Tell me how you make item 16. He glanced down. "Charred leek custard." "That is the title." I asked how. "I don't need to perform for you." "You do if your name is above my pass." He held my stare, then looked away first. The inventory began with my handwriting and ended in a legal assistance font. Beside each recipe was a value derived from projected franchise sales. Our food had been priced like office furniture. Thomas placed a stained notebook in front of me. "Chef, the onion broth started with yours, but the burnt peel thing was mine." "And the vinegar finish?" "Mina? Because you were both afraid of acid," Mina said. "Respectfully, pastry people use acid like revenge. That is why dessert has an ending." For the first time that night, the room laughed. The sound lasted 2 seconds and changed the temperature anyway. I wrote 3 names beside the broth. Recipe after recipe broke the same way. The short rib had begun in my notebook, but Tomas had changed the smoke. Mina had corrected the glaze. A dishwasher named Luis had suggested serving the sauce beneath the meat after watching guests leave it on the rim. The dish was mine in origin and ours in survival. Lauren watched the list grow. If you classify everything as collective, you weaken your own claim. I'm correcting it. You could seek an immediate injunction based on sole authorship. Your attorney already emailed me. I checked my phone. He had. He believed the missing plate and dated notebooks gave us enough to stop use of the entire menu. Marcus leaned against the wall. There, the fastest solution. Adrian freezes the recipes. The launch collapses. 43 employees go home, and he wins the privilege of being right. The remark was cruel, because it fit the man I had been 8 months earlier. Vivian said nothing. She let the choice remain mine. Mina turned a pencil between her fingers. If you claim all of it, I will testify that you did not create all of it. I would expect you to. Would you? I remembered leaving after the separation meeting. Mina had followed me into the alley and said the staff needed to know whether I was coming back. I had told her Lauren could answer operational questions. It had sounded professional. It had also been cowardice wearing a clean jacket. I called my attorney on speaker. File a notice preserving my individual notebooks, I said. Do not seek to freeze the full menu. Adrian, that gives away leverage. The leverage belongs to people whose names are not on your engagement letter. If the company exploits the recipes before trial, then we build a license that protects every contributor, no injunction against the team. Lauren stared at me. You understand that without an injunction, Marcus can adapt the menu. He can try. Marcus pushed off the wall. You think technique is a fingerprint. No, fingerprints are easier to copy. He smiled without warmth. I built 12 profitable restaurants. You licensed your face to 12 dining rooms. That is not the same sentence. Vivian stepped between us before pride became a waste of time. We need documentation, not posture. Adrian, what proves contribution? Tasting logs, version histories, vendor invoices tied to trials, staff statements, health certification submissions include ingredient methods. Lauren's eyes narrowed. Those certification records are in the hotel compliance archive. Vivian nodded. I'll release them. Her counsel, who had arrived without anyone noticing, whispered in her ear. Vivian's expression sharpened. The lender filed a preservation demand. Nothing leaves the premises without copies. Why would a lender care about tasting logs? Mina asked. Lauren closed her folder too quickly. I noticed. So did Vivian. What did you pledge? I asked. Lauren's answer came after a careful breath. The operating company pledged its commercial assets, including the recipe inventory, including the projected franchise package. The room went quiet. Marcus looked genuinely irritated now. That is not how the facility was presented to me. Lauren turned on him. Your capital closed the final gap. The lender required security. Against a menu you told me the company owned without dispute. Vivian glanced from them to the documents. How much? 4.6 million, Lauren said. The number landed harder than a threat. If the recipes were removed from collateral, the lender could declare a material deficiency. If the restaurant stayed closed, the cash flow covenant failed. If we opened under Marcus, we ratified the very inventory we disputed. Every available choice hurt the people who had done the least to create the problem. Mina's phone buzzed. She read the message and stood. Walk-in 2 is warming. I was moving before she finished. The compressor display flashed an error. Inside sat $12,000 of seafood, dairy, and produce meant for the launch. A repair technician could not arrive until morning. Tomas looked at me. We can move half to the hotel kitchen. The rest won't hold, Marcus said. Then we open, Lauren said. Legally, service under the operating company protects the asset, Vivian said. Opening under disputed credit may prejudice the audit. Mina looked at all of us. Wonderful. The fish will be delighted to learn it died during a sophisticated disagreement. Through the back window, I saw the first canceled guests lingering on the sidewalk. Beyond them stood hotel night staff, delivery drivers, and neighbors watching trays of food disappear into a locked building. I took off my suit jacket and reached for a chef coat. We are not opening Ember Row, I said. We are feeding the block. We served the first bowl of smoked onion broth through a locked restaurant door. The hotel's banquet captain found folding tables. Mina found compostable bowls. Tomas ran extension cords from the loading dock, and I turned the sheltered valet lane into a line kitchen before anyone with a title could organize a meeting to stop me. Vivian stood beside the master switch. Health permit? Covers temporary service on hotel property if the food is prepared in a certified kitchen. Fire clearance? Electric induction only, no open flame. Liability? You own the sidewalk. I was afraid you would say that. She called hotel operations. 2 minutes later, barriers redirected the queue, and security opened a path for staff. She never called it permission. I never asked for it. Lauren followed me to the prep table. You cannot give away inventory pledged to a lender. It spoils by morning. Then document the loss. I am documenting dinner. This is exactly what made running the company impossible with you. Every crisis becomes a moral performance. I stopped chopping. And every person becomes a line in a spreadsheet when you are frightened. The words hit cleanly. Neither of us pretended they were only about food. She looked toward the staff assembling portions. I kept this place alive after you left. I know. Do you? The lender called me at home. Vendors called my mother. I refinanced our apartment while you slept on Mina's sofa and refused to answer anything that began with cash flow. I know that too. Then stop acting as if I woke up wanting to erase you. You did not wake up wanting it. You chose it awake. She flinched, then returned to the dining room without another word. The first people in line were not launch guests. They were housekeepers, ending their shift. A bicycle courier who had delivered our herbs and a family from the apartment building across the street. I handed the broth to an elderly man who asked what it cost. A useful opinion, I said. He tasted it. Too little salt, Mina called from behind me. He is correct. We are no longer accepting opinions. The line doubled. Cancelled guests began posting about the sidewalk service. A food reporter who had come to photograph Marcus instead filmed Tomas, explaining why 3 names belonged beside the broth. Servers wrote contributor cards by hand, but no dish carried a single chef's name. Marcus watched from beneath the awning, still immaculate. You are turning a flagship launch into charity theater. I handed him an apron. Then improve the production value. He looked at it. You cannot be serious. The walk-in is failing seriously. If I cook, you will say I admitted the menu is yours. If you do not, everyone will notice your concern for employment ends where onions begin. Mina held out a knife. He can dice. Television confirms it. Marcus took the apron. He was fast, disciplined, and far better than I wanted him to be. His weakness was not fraudulence. It was certainty that skill entitled him to whatever weaker people failed to protect. He corrected a sauce without asking, and it improved. I wrote the change on the tasting sheet under his name. He stared at it. You are crediting me. You did the work. Even now, especially now. Otherwise, this is just revenge with better lighting. For 10 minutes, we worked without speaking. The line moved. The food disappeared. A server passed a cash box toward me, but I pushed it back. No sales, I said. Voluntary staff fund only. Separate ledger. Vivian had already placed the hotel's finance manager beside it. Every donation recorded. Thorne House will match wages, not revenue. Mina gave her a measured look. That was almost thoughtful. I am devastated by your surprise. At 10:30, Tomas's babysitter texted that she could stay another hour. At 10:40, the staff fund covered the extra cost. At 11, the final sea bass left the table, and the warming walk-in held nothing but herbs and 3 bottles of mustard. Nobody admitted ordering. The sidewalk applauded when we began breaking down. Lauren stood behind the glass doors, alone in the dark dining room. The restaurant looked more honest closed than it had under the launch lights. Marcus removed his apron and folded it carefully. You proved the kitchen can operate without my name. That was not the point. It will be the headline. His phone rang. He checked the screen and declined the call. Your publicist? I asked. The lender. Why are they calling you? He looked toward Lauren before answering. Because the franchise package is not merely collateral. My holding company guaranteed part of the facility. Vivian stepped closer. How much exposure? 1.8 million if the launch fails and the recipe valuation is impaired. You invested that much without verifying ownership? His mouth hardened. I verified the company owned its assets. I did not anticipate a founder signing broad transfer language and then discovering principles in a linen cart. I deserved part of that, Marcus continued. The lender required my name on the launch because my future franchise income supports repayment. If you strip my credit, I lose the guarantee and the capital already advanced. Verified capital can be repaid, I said. Chef credit cannot be purchased with it. Repay it from what? Free broth? Before I could answer, Lauren came through the side door holding a tablet. The Sidewalk service triggered a demand from the lender. They want the restaurant open under the collateral schedule by tomorrow night, or they begin enforcement. Vivian read the notice. They moved quickly, because someone broadcast disputed ownership to half the city. Lauren looked at her. Your lock did that. Your rebrand created the dispute. Your hotel approved the rebrand. That stopped Vivian. Lauren opened the approval chain. Near the bottom sat an electronic signature, Vivian Thorne, approved for launch. The attached page showed the new logo, Marcus's name above the pass, and no reference to me. I looked at Vivian. You approved this? She did not reach for an excuse. I approved a brand deck, with my name removed. I was told it was a temporary market-facing treatment during the separation. Did you ask me? Her silence was answer enough. The night's fragile sense of alliance disappeared. She had locked the doors after seeing the plate, but weeks earlier, she had signed the page that put it in the cart. Lauren's voice was quiet. You all want one villain because it makes the story easy. There isn't one. There is a restaurant that ran out of money, a founder who vanished, a CEO who approved what she did not read, and a chef who invested because everyone told him the title was clean. Mina tied the final trash bag. And 43 people who did read their schedules. No one had an answer for her. Vivian returned the tablet to Lauren. Send me the unedited approval trail. Why? I asked. Because you deserve to know exactly what I authorized. I deserved that before tonight. Yes. One word. No defense. It did not repair anything, but it made anger harder to simplify. I picked up the empty broth pot. Tomorrow morning, we finish the inventory. After that, you recuse yourself from any decision about my position. Lauren blinked. Marcus looked amused. Vivian only nodded. Agreed, she said. I carried the pot inside, passing the copper plate where Vivian had left it beside the locked door. For the first time all night, my name was not the thing I trusted least. Vivian's approval trail arrived at 6:14 the next morning. She sent every version, comment, and attachment, including the ones that made her look careless. I read them in the staff locker room, with burnt coffee and the copper plate on the bench beside me. The first deck called Marcus Launch Collaborator. The second called him Culinary Partner. In the fourth, Lauren's branding consultant removed Founded by Adrian and Lauren Cole from the final page. Vivian's comment read, Keep legal ownership language in definitive documents. Approved for launch presentation only. The deck had then become a wall, a press release, and a lender's valuation schedule. She had not ordered my erasure. She had approved the door through which it entered. At 7, she joined me without an assistant. Her hair was down, and the same navy coat covered the blouse she had worn the night before. You did not go home, I said. Neither did you. I have fewer shareholders who notice. Mine notice only when I disappoint them. I turned the laptop toward her. You wrote presentation only. I did, and never checked how it was used. No. Why approve it? She looked at the empty hooks where staff coats usually hung. Because Lauren told me the separation required a neutral market identity until ownership was settled. Because Marcus's guarantee was expiring. Because I had 6 other properties in refinancing. Because I decided your absence meant consent was somebody else's problem. The answer was not flattering, which was why I believed it. You locked the doors very quickly for someone who took weeks to notice the wall. Seeing the plate made the abstraction physical. That is convenient. It is also true. She slid a signed memo across the bench. Effective immediately, she had recused herself from decisions involving my employment, recipe ownership, and the settlement. An independent hospitality trustee would represent Thorne House. Vivian had also surrendered her authority to reopen Ember Row unilaterally. Your board agreed to this? I asked. They will in approximately 20 minutes. That sounds optimistic. They can agree before or after shouting. I am flexible about sequence. I almost smiled. She noticed and kindly ignored it. What does recusal cost you? Control of the decision. Possibly control of the property. You do like locking doors. Only when I have been careless about opening them. Mina appeared with 2 folders and saved us from the silence that followed. If this is contrition, do it while sorting invoice dates. By noon, the inventory was complete. Of 114 listed recipes, 27 were mine alone. 19 belonged to individual staff members, 51 were collaborative, and 17 were standard preparations no sane person should claim to have invented. Marcus listed vinaigrette as proprietary, Mina said. Perhaps he discovered oil, I said. Marcus entered in shirt sleeves, carrying the franchise collateral schedule. Mock me after you explain how to replace 4.6 million by tomorrow. He set the document on the table. His guarantee covered more than I expected, but so did his expenditures. Equipment deposits, public relations contracts, advance rent for 2 planned locations. He had not simply purchased a title, he had been sold a system that did not exist. Lauren sat across from him, composed enough that only I saw the tremor in her thumb. The projections assumed a successful launch. The projections assumed clear assets, Marcus said. You warranted them. Based on Adrian's signed transfer. Stop using my signature as if it wrote every later decision, I said. She turned to me. Then stop using my decision as if it erased every earlier failure. The old rhythm was back, but this time I did not leave the room. I abandoned the business when I should have stayed in the argument, I said. That is mine. You removed credit you knew was disputed. That is yours. We can hold 2 failures without blending them into permission. Lauren looked down at the recipe ledger. The independent trustee arrived with counsel and a proposal. Reopen for a limited service under generic dish names, place revenue in escrow, and defer all credit until arbitration. Mina read it once. No. The trustee blinked. Ms. Park, this preserves employment. It preserves labor while hiding authorship. That is how we arrived here. Tomas and the elected dining room representative joined her. The staff would work only if each dish carried verified contributor credit and the operating company signed a temporary license recognizing those contributors. Marcus objected. A menu cannot read like film credits. Then make the print small, Mina said. I studied the collateral schedule. The lender had valued the franchise rights at $3 million, but the valuation assumed exclusive company ownership. What they actually possessed was a disputed bundle, brand rights, equipment, leases, and whatever recipe licenses contributors chose to grant. We are negotiating the wrong asset, I said. Everyone looked at me. Lauren may control the Ember Row company. Marcus may have a guarantee tied to its franchise plan, but the recipes do not need to belong to that company for the restaurant to use them. The trustee leaned forward. A license. A contributor-owned license. The staff forms an entity holding documented recipe rights. Ember Row receives a revocable operating license if it meets wage, credit, and governance terms. Marcus shook his head. The lender will never accept revocable collateral. Then the franchise package is dead. And my capital? Verified launch capital becomes a debt of the new operating entity, repaid from revenue before distributions. No chef title attached. Lauren's expression sharpened. You are proposing to move the restaurant out of the company I kept alive. I am proposing that your company lease the name, equipment, and space to an independent operator. You receive a negotiated exit instead of a lawsuit. The staff receives governance. Marcus receives repayment. The lender receives a smaller, honest asset pool. And you? I receive my 27 recipes and a vote like every other contributor. She stared at me, trying to find the hidden demand. Vivian spoke for the first time since the trustee arrived. Thorne House can waive its purchase option and offer the space on a performance lease. The trustee turned. You are recused. I am stating what I will recommend to the board regarding our own option. You decide the restaurant terms. Waiving control reduces the hotel group's recovery. So did my approval. The trustee made a note. Lauren stood and walked to the dark dining room. I followed, but stopped several feet behind her. You built a solution in one morning, she said. Where was that man when I was begging you to read cash flow reports? Hiding in the kitchen, because food still obeyed me. I did not want Marcus's name on the wall. But you put it there, because the bank did not accept love as security. Neither did our marriage. Her shoulders dropped. No, for once, neither of us tried to win the sentence. I will consider the license, she said. But if the lender refuses, I cannot walk away with nothing. You should not. You kept the company alive. We value that honestly. You can say that now? I should have said it before I left. When we returned, Marcus was on the phone with the lender. His face had gone still. He ended the call and looked at us. They will review the license only if Ember Row demonstrates a certifiable menu by 6 tonight. We have one, I said. No, you have contributor notes. Certification requires a responsible executive chef. He glanced toward his name above the pass. And according to the operating documents, he said, that is still me. At 4 that afternoon, Marcus attempted to certify a menu he had rewritten in 90 minutes. He changed the short ribs glaze, replaced Mina's choux with a chocolate tart, and renamed every dish that carried a disputed origin. On paper, the list looked independent. On the prep table, it looked like someone wearing another man's suit after shortening the sleeves. The health consultant began reviewing methods. Marcus stood at the pass in a clean jacket beneath his brass nameplate. Station leads, he called. Sign your production sheets. Nobody moved. Tomas looked at me. I kept my hands at my sides. This choice had to belong to them. Marcus's voice hardened. You are scheduled employees of Ember Row. Mina placed the unsigned pastry sheet on the pass. The tart uses my base ratio, a standard ratio. Then make it without my notes. He turned to Tomas. The braise, the altered glaze breaks the salt balance. That is an opinion. It is my certification. One by one, the station leads returned their sheets unsigned. They were not striking over me, they were refusing to certify food whose development record was false. Lauren watched from the dining room. The lender's representative sat beside her with a clock open on his tablet. 5:42, he said. Without certification by 6, the collateral review fails. Marcus stepped toward me. Tell them to sign. I do not own their signatures. You orchestrated this. If I had, Mina would have corrected my punctuation. Comma after if, Mina said. Even the consultant coughed into his fist. Marcus lowered his voice. You think this makes you noble. If the facility defaults, my company absorbs the first loss. Your staff still loses the restaurant. Then sit down and negotiate the license. With cooks holding veto power over every future dish? With contributors holding rights over the work they created. Future dishes can have future agreements. No lender funds sentiment. Good. We are offering contracts. He looked through the pass at the silent kitchen. For the first time, the name above him seemed too heavy rather than too bright. At 5:47, he removed his jacket and sat at the negotiation table. The next hours were not cinematic. Nobody delivered the perfect speech. We argued over percentages, depreciation, recipe categories, repayment priority, and whether the phrase material deviation needed its own definition. It did. Lauren wanted a 7-year royalty on the Ember Row name. Mina wanted 3, and called 7 a hostage situation with stationery. They settled at 4, declining each year. Marcus submitted his expenses. We rejected the publicist's luxury suite and approved equipment deposits, supplier retainers, and verified launch costs. His $1.8 million guarantee converted to a capped note payable from operating profit. In exchange, he relinquished executive chef credit and every franchise representation tied to the disputed menu. "My name will be linked to a cancelled launch," he said. "Mine was found under napkins," I replied. "Reputations survive storage." He looked at me for a long moment. "You enjoy being difficult." "Only when simpler people charge consulting fees." At 7:15, Lauren's exit remained the largest problem. She owned the operating company. Without her, Ember Row would not have survived construction delays, a kitchen flood, and 2 quarters of impossible rent. With her current terms, the contributors could never afford independence. "You are valuing my work at zero because it did not come on a plate," she said. "No," I said. "I am refusing to value your work by giving you ours." The difference sat between us. Vivian remained at the far end of the room, answering questions only when the trustee requested hotel information. She did not steer, she did not rescue. When Thornhouse's control option came up, she handed the trustee a signed waiver recommendation and accepted the board's condition that she would take no bonus from the property for 2 years. I read the condition twice. "You agreed to this? It is proportionate." To one approval? To the authority behind it. Lauren noticed the way I looked at her. "Do not turn this into another rescue fantasy, Adrian. Vivian protects companies for a living." Vivian's expression did not change. "And Lauren knows that, because she once asked me to protect this one from you." The sentence opened a new silence. I turned to Lauren. "When?" "After you left the refinancing meeting." "You called Vivian?" "I called every investor who might keep us open." Vivian answered before suspicion could grow teeth. She asked for bridge capital. I declined unless the hotel received oversight. That is how Thornhouse entered the deal. There was nothing personal between us. Lauren's laugh held no humor. Personal was the one luxury nobody could finance. I could have made that line an indictment. Instead, I opened the cash flow file I had avoided 8 months earlier. Lauren's restructuring had prevented 21 layoffs. She had deferred her own salary. She had also increased brand debt and placed recipes into a collateral schedule without consent. Both records were true. 4-year royalty, I said. Full repayment of your documented shareholder loans. Public co-founder credit for financing and operations. No ongoing control after transition. And the divorce? We finish it. Cleanly. No business leverage in the personal settlement. She looked at the page, then at me. You finally learned to read the ugly numbers. They got my attention. Her mouth trembled into the ghost of an old smile. They always did, eventually. She signed. At 7:40, the lender accepted the contributor-owned recipe license as replacement collateral, subject to a 90-day performance covenant. At 7:52, the independent operating company elected a 5-seat board, 2 staff representatives, 1 outside finance member, 1 hotel representative without a control vote, and 1 culinary seat selected by contributors. They offered me the culinary seat and executive chef contract. I read every page. Mina watched over my shoulder. Should we bring a pillow? I am growing. At this speed, we will need a larger building. I signed only after adding a clause requiring attribution records for every future menu. Marcus took down his brass plate himself. He held it for a moment, thumb across the engraved name. "For what it is worth," I said. "The correction you made to the sauce stays. Credited." He looked genuinely surprised. "You really cannot help yourself. It was a good correction. I have standards." He placed the plate on the counter instead of in the linen cart. The staff began rebuilding the original menu, but not exactly as it had been. Every production sheet now carried contributor initials. The printed menu listed the Kitchen Collective, beneath my executive chef credit. The health consultant certified it at 9/11. Only one approval remained, the trustee's recommendation to the hotel board. She reviewed the settlement, then closed the folder. The board will ask whether this structure is less profitable than the franchise plan. It is, Lauren said. They will ask whether the public controversy has damaged the brand. It has, Marcus said. They will ask why Thorne House should retain a restaurant that embarrassed its CEO. Vivian met her eyes. Tell them the restaurant corrected the record before serving a plate. Most companies wait until after dessert. The trustee looked at me. And if they refuse? I glanced at the team resetting the dining room. Yesterday, I would have walked out before someone else could reject me. Tonight, I had stayed through every ugly number. Then we take the license. The people and the food somewhere else, I said. Ember Row is a door. The kitchen is who walks through it. The hotel board approved the new structure at 11:38 that night. They did not approve it because they admired courage. They approved it because the settlement cost less than litigation. The Sidewalk service had generated 6 million views, and every canceled guest had accepted a new reservation. Institutions sometimes arrive at the right answer by taking an unromantic route. We reopened Ember Row 2 nights later. There was no red carpet. Marcus declined the invitation and released a statement acknowledging the contributor license. Lauren attended as a departing co-founder, not an owner. She wore the ivory suit again, though this time it looked less like armor. At 6:45, the staff gathered in front of the kitchen pass. My copper plate waited on the counter, polished but still marked where the screws had bitten its corners. Tomas held the drill. Mina held a second, longer plate, engraved with 23 names and the words, Ember Row Kitchen Collective. Yours goes above, Tomas said. I looked at the empty rectangle where Marcus's name had hung. No, Mina narrowed her eyes. If this becomes false humility, I am charging overtime. I took the longer plate from her and positioned it first. The foundation goes on the wall before the signature. We mounted the collective plate above the pass. Beneath it, centered and smaller, we returned mine. Founder, executive chef, Adrian Cole. Not discarded, not enlarged, not alone. The kitchen applauded once, loudly, then immediately complained that service prep was behind. Lauren waited by the pastry station. It looks right. Mina chose the spacing. Of course she did. We stood beside the restaurant we had built and nearly destroyed in different ways. The divorce documents are final, she said. My attorney filed them this afternoon. Mine confirmed. No last-minute argument? I read every page. Miracles before dinner. I offered my hand. She looked at it, then ignored it, and hugged me once. It was not romantic. That mattered. It was the farewell of two people who had once loved each other well, then survived loving each other badly. For the record, I said, you kept Ember Row alive. For the record, you gave it something worth keeping alive. She stepped back before either of us confused honesty with reversal. Do not disappear from the next difficult thing, she said. Do not collateralize it without telling me. I walked into that. You used to appreciate efficient service. This time she laughed. Then she left through the front door with her royalty agreement, her co-founder credit, and no key in her pocket. Marcus's verified costs were converted into the capped note the following morning. His holding company withdrew from the franchise plan. 3 weeks later, he opened a smaller restaurant under his own menu. He kept the sauce correction and credited Ember Row's collective in the development notes. I pretended not to be pleased. The first service began at 7. The opening guests had expected scandal and found dinner instead. Each menu carried a short line beneath every signature dish, developed by the Ember Row Kitchen Collective, with contributor records available on request. Nobody requested them. That was fine. Transparency did not require an audience to exist. At table 12, the elderly man from the sidewalk tasted the broth and raised his hand. I approached. Still needs salt? Now it has too much. Consistency is important. He finished the bowl anyway. Vivian arrived after the first seating, not as CEO but as the hotel's non-voting observer. She took a corner table and ordered whatever the kitchen recommended. When a server asked about allergies, she said, "Only incomplete attachments." I sent her the charred leek custard. She ate alone, read no emails, and never once looked toward the pass. That restraint drew my attention more effectively than staring would have. At the end of service, the staff counted covers, wages, and donations from the sidewalk night. Every employee received full pay for both canceled days. The new company finished its first night above the performance covenant. The practical crisis was over. The restaurant had governance. The recipes had owners and licenses. Lauren had a fair exit. Marcus had repayment without stolen credit. Thorne House had a lease without a control option. The staff had jobs that came with votes. I had no excuse left to vanish. Vivian waited near the locked front doors while I checked the final station. She had returned the master key to the trustee and no longer had authority over my contract. Her board had also reassigned oversight of Ember Row to another executive. She had done every formal thing necessary to ensure whatever came next could be refused. "You stayed," she said. "I work here. That has not always guaranteed your presence. Mina has been giving interviews. Extensively." I leaned against the host stand. "Thank you for the approval trail. You should not thank someone for returning information she should have checked before signing. I am not absolving you. I am thanking you." She considered that distinction. "Accepted. And the doors. I would lock them again. That is mildly alarming. You appeared pleased at the time. I had just found my professional identity under table linen. My standards were unstable." Her smile was small and devastatingly rare. Then she glanced toward the plates above the pass. "It looks right?" Lauren said the same thing. "Then the evidence is overwhelming." We left separately that night. The divorce became final 5 weeks later. The hotel's new oversight structure had been active for 37 days. I knew both numbers because I had learned that ugly details became dangerous when treated as somebody else's problem. On the 38th day, Vivian entered Ember Row at 4 in the afternoon, before prep and after the accountants had left. She wore a dark green dress instead of a suit and carried no file. Mina saw her first. "We are closed." "I know. No meetings during prep. This is not a meeting." Mina looked at me, then at Vivian. "If either of you uses the phrase, professional boundaries, I will turn on the mixer." She disappeared into pastry. Vivian placed a reservation card on the pass. 2 seats at a small restaurant across town, Friday, 8 p.m. No Thorne House affiliation, no business purpose, and no room for plausible deniability. "You are asking me to dinner," I said. I was attempting clarity. "You booked before asking. The restaurant is difficult to reserve. There it is." "What?" "Incomplete information becoming permission to decide quickly for other people." She reached for the card. "I can cancel it." I covered her hand with mine. "Do not." Her eyes lifted to mine. The attraction between us had lived for weeks, inside careful distance, every glance checked against the power she once held. Now there was no contract between us, no marriage left unfinished, and no crisis demanding gratitude be mistaken for affection. "Friday," I said, "but I choose the second date." "You are assuming there will be one. You locked 200 people out of a hotel to defend a plate. Caution is not your defining quality." "Neither is patience. 8 o'clock then." She turned toward the dining room, but stopped beneath the kitchen pass. The copper caught the afternoon light. My name remained legible beneath the names of the people who had made it matter. Vivian touched the edge of the collective plate, not mine. This was the right order. Yes. Outside, the front doors stood open for the evening staff. I no longer needed someone powerful to lock them for me, and I no longer mistook walking away for dignity. My name was back above the kitchen, exactly where it belonged, beneath the people who had earned the right to open the door